Continuing where we left off in the Halachot of the Chafetz Chaim, and where we left off, discussing different categories that would be considered TOELET, to procure payment. If people must cooperate with payments in a communal setting. They bring an example. For example, in Israeli apartment buildings, there's like a HOA where Vada Bait is one person that needs to collect all of the dues of the apartment building. And they have been warned that those who do not comply will be posted on a bulletin board or otherwise publicized. Rav Yosef Shalom Eliashiv rules that it is permitted and not considered Lashon Hara. Of course, one's intentions must be pure and for TOELET. One must ascertain that there is no valid reason or excuse has been given for the lack of contribution to that cause. So again, let's say an apartment building that have HOA and some of the units aren't paying. Is there a way, the way to get everyone to pay in this scenario would be to publicize the names. In fact, some Poskim write that you shouldn't necessarily write the ones who didn't pay, but you should write the ones who have paid, and everyone will know like that who still owes their dues to the HOA fund. But in this scenario, Halakha explains that it's not considered Lashon Hara when they owe their dues and they have to pay towards the apartment building. Next would be performance reviews. If someone works in a place where periodic performance reviews must be submitted about him by superiors to management. For example, a physician in a hospital or in corporate America where you're always giving reviews quarterly or wherever their system is. This would seem to constitute a case where the subject, by accepting the job, agrees to this possible Lashon Hara being spoken about him, especially as there may be TOELET involved. There is a machloket amongst the Poskim, however, if a secretary may prepare these forms, or if the supervisor submitting the reports must fill the names in himself, as there is no reason for anyone else to know this negative information. The Achronim also discuss, what about a secretary in a doctor's office? We know in New York State there's HIPAA laws, where you have privacy laws about medical conditions of people, whether it's first responders, doctors, nurses, anyone involved in healthcare has these ideas of HIPAA. So how does that apply to Lashon Hara? So obviously, speaking about people's privacy is completely Lashon Hara, and not just would it be against the law, it's against the Torah as well. But the question here that the Poskim discuss is, what about a secretary? That the doctor doesn't have the time to do the charting. He's busy seeing patients. The nurse is doing a bunch of rounds. Can he hire a secretary to do the charting, to put in the information? It's a beautiful question, because whoever thinks like that shows that their place is in the right mind. And the halacha of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was posek that it's mutar, because that's the system at place. A doctor may hire a secretary to discuss, to disclose, and write down a private history in the charts, even though that's in theory Lashon Hara from the doctor to the secretary about the patient. Nevertheless, the Achronim write that it's mutar. And lastly, an inspector or teacher, one who is appointed or hired to oversee other people. For example, a teacher or rabbi or a kashrut supervisor, and to report any infractions committed to a supervisor, to a superior, is permitted to do so. In addition, the superior is allowed to act upon information, since there is no other way for the inspector to do his job. If the overseer is known to dislike the employee in question, one is not permitted to accept his report. Again, as with all TOELET, there needs to be pure intention, no ulterior motives. Once there's ulterior motives, then you rule out, you lose the heter, the permissibility of TOELET, because it's no longer for a constructive purpose. We assume that it's for his ulterior motive. Therefore, even in the scenario, a mashgiach, he can do his job, but unless he has a personal issue against the balabait, the restaurant owner, then that would be a problem. A wonderful day to scale mitzvot.